Welcome to the Marineff Oyster Prism introduction video. My name is Jess Bone and I'm a research assistant for the Marineff project. This video is going to give you a background into why and how the Marineff Oyster Prisms were created. European flat oysters are classified as a priority species in the UK National Biodiversity Action Plan because of a loss of 50% in their population over the last 25 years. The same is true at European and global levels, with an estimated 85% of oyster beds and reef habitats lost. The graph illustrates the rapid decline in solent oyster stocks in the 1990s, and since 2000, the oyster is commercially extinct in this region. As recently as the 1970s and 80s, the solent contained Europe's largest self-sustaining flat oyster fishery, supporting 450 boats and directly employing 700 people during peak harvesting. The decline in oyster abundance can be attributed to many factors, including habitat destruction, disease mortality, predation, water quality, fishing, and the interactions among these factors. Oysters also have the potential to improve water clarity and remove algae from the water through their suspension feeding activities. The restoration of native oysters has been addressed by a number of projects in the UK and Europe, including those listed on screen. The Solent project, started in 2015, plans to increase oyster populations to levels that restore important ecological functions and adequate broodstock to sustain regional populations, achieve a sustainable oyster fishery, reduce the impacts of disease, predation, and development on oyster populations and habitats, and extend the areas classified for shellfish collection. Support restoration projects and improvements in water quality and monitoring. The Marineff project aims to create new bioreceptive marine infrastructure to improve the ecological status of coastal and transitional channel waters, as well as to involve professionals and stakeholders in the project. The University of Southampton is supporting the current Solent oyster restoration project, with specially designed oyster settlement structures deployed in the Solent. In the Solent, the Blue Marine Foundation have led with the deployment of oyster brood stock cages suspended from marina pontoons around the region. These mature oysters, protected from predation, release larvae into surrounding waters, which will hopefully settle and restock the depleted oyster beds. However, these cages need constant cleaning to prevent marine growth blocking water flow. In 2012, the University of Southampton team deployed an experimental reef stocked with oysters in Poole Bay in Dorset in the UK. Oysters were elevated 80 centimetres above the seabed and compared with oysters held on the seabed, as demonstrated in this photo. The published PhD study by Amonsak Sawasdi showed that an elevated reef habitat enhanced the physiological performance and growth of the oysters. There are groups across the world experimenting with structures to encourage oyster growth, from cages of shells, shells cemented to concrete, or 3D printed concrete modules, as seen here. This photograph shows a natural oyster reef where the oysters have continuously settled on and next to each other. This gives us clear guidelines for producing artificial structures. Elevation is very important. Sheltered surfaces, including overhangs, increased surface roughness and surface complexity, natural surfaces or surfaces embedded with oyster shell, cemented live oysters to fast-track reef development, and an attractive surface for larval settlement. The oyster prism design is based on the University of Southampton studies in Kerala, southwest India, where the reef units were simple to produce. They were cast as thin concrete slabs on the beach, tied together as a prism, and paddled out to the deployment sites. These proved to be very successful in attracting fish and being colonized by a wide variety of organisms, as well as being stable and resisting the impact of tropical monsoons. Here we can see how the Kerala reefs have inspired the design of the Marineff oyster prisms, which are cast now as single units and deployed by a barge. Thanks for watching. There are more videos in the Oyster Prism series which are listed on screen. Be sure to also visit our social media and the Marineff project website for more resources.